First, let's start with this case. I, 29-year-old woman, bought my first house after saving for years. It wasn't easy, but I had worked hard, cut back on luxuries, and spent years renting while watching every penny. When I finally had enough, I found the perfect house, a beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. It was exactly what I had been dreaming of, and after a smooth process, I officially became a homeowner. At first, everything seemed great. The house was in good condition, the area was peaceful, and I was thrilled to finally have a place to call my own. But then, I met my next-door neighbor. She was a woman in her mid-40s, and from the moment we met, I could tell something was off. She introduced herself but didn't seem friendly. She had a tight smile and a strange look in her eyes, like she was forcing herself to be polite. A few days later, I found out why. Another neighbor casually mentioned that she had been bidding on my house but lost. Apparently, she had been eyeing the house for months and was furious when she didn't get it. I didn't think much of it at first. Sure, it must have been disappointing for her, but that wasn't my fault. I had no idea she wanted the house when I made my offer, and I got it fair and square. That's when the harassment started. At first, it was small things. She would glare at me whenever she saw me outside. If I waved or said hello, she would ignore me or roll her eyes. Then, she started making passive-aggressive comments whenever I walked past her. I ignored her, thinking she'd get over it eventually. But then she escalated. One day, I woke up to find my trash cans knocked over, garbage strewn across my driveway. Another time, I came home to find that my porch plants had been ripped out of their pots. I had no proof it was her, but I knew. The worst part was how she talked about me to the other neighbors. She started telling people that I had somehow stolen the house from her, that I had used dishonest means to get it. I didn't think anyone would believe her, but some neighbors started acting weird around me. Then she took it even further. One day, I received a notice that I was being sued. When I read the papers, I couldn't believe my eyes. She was accusing me of fraudulently obtaining the house. She claimed that I had somehow tricked the seller or the real estate agent into giving me the house instead of her. The lawsuit made no sense at all. There was no fraud, no trickery. Just a normal real estate transaction where I placed an offer and it was accepted. I had no choice but to get a lawyer, which was frustrating because I had just spent so much money on buying the house. But I refused to let her intimidate me. The case went to court, and the judge immediately saw how ridiculous it was. He dismissed it within minutes, even laughing at how absurd her claims were. He also ordered her to pay my legal fees, which I could tell enraged her. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. A few weeks later, I received another notice, this time from the Homeowners Association. They informed me that someone had reported me for illegally occupying the property and that they were investigating. I was beyond frustrated at this point. I had all the legal documents proving I owned the house. It didn't take long for the Homeowners Association to realize the complaint was false. And when they found out who had made the report, they fined her for filing false complaints. After that, she completely avoided me. She stopped looking in my direction, stopped talking to the neighbors about me, and basically acted like I didn't exist. I can only assume she was embarrassed after everything backfired on her. I was just relieved she had finally left me alone. Now, every time I see her outside, she rushes back into her house like she's afraid I'll say something to her. I won't, of course. I'm just happy to live in my house in peace. But sometimes I wonder if she still lies awake at night, thinking about the home she lost. So was I wrong for not caring about her feelings and standing my ground, or is she just completely out of line? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. She lost a fair bidding war and decided to make it your problem. Harassing you, filing a ridiculous lawsuit, and making false complaints to the Homeowners Association all show that she has serious entitlement issues. You did nothing wrong. She's the one who made a fool of herself. You're not in the wrong. The fact that she actually took you to court over this is mind-blowing. She wasted her time, your time, and the court's time over a house she didn't even own. I'm glad the judge saw right through her nonsense and made her pay for your legal fees. That should have taught her a lesson. Everyone sucks here. Kind of, but mostly her. She is definitely the bigger problem, but if I were you, I would have documented the harassment better and reported her earlier, maybe even gotten a restraining order. Sometimes ignoring people like this just encourages them to escalate. Next up, I got settled into my seat, ordered a drink, and was ready to relax before takeoff. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw a woman who looked to be in her mid-50s standing there with a teenage boy behind her. She didn't look happy. She said I needed to swap seats with her son. At first, I thought I misheard her. She pointed toward the economy section and said her son was sitting back there and he would be more comfortable up here. I asked if he had a medical condition that required extra space, but she just waved her hand and said he was a growing boy and needed the legroom. That's when she started acting like she couldn't breathe. She clutched her chest and started saying she was having a panic attack. She demanded that the flight attendants do something. She suddenly stopped her panic attack and glared at me. Then, before I could react, she grabbed my drink and threw it all over me. She screamed that I didn't deserve first class. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. She made a scene, threw a drink on you, and still thought she was the victim. I feel bad for the son. He probably knew his mom was embarrassing him, but couldn't do anything about it. Next up, One day, she stopped me while I was walking my dog and told me I needed to change his name. She said it was disrespectful to her son and that every time I called out for my dog, it was like I was mocking her child. I told her that Max already knew his name, and I wasn't going to change it just because she didn't like it. That didn't sit well with her. Over the next few days, she kept bringing it up, each time growing more aggressive. She claimed her son was upset and confused. I tried to be polite at first, but eventually I told her that it wasn't my problem. My dog was named Max before I even met her or her kid. That was the end of it for me, but clearly not for her. A week later, an officer from Animal Control knocked on my door. Karen had filed a complaint saying my dog was aggressive. I was shocked because Max was one of the calmest dogs I had ever met. He rarely even barked, let alone showed any aggression. The officer checked Max and quickly realized that Karen had lied. Max wagged his tail the entire time, happily accepting treats and pets. The officer apologized for the trouble and said it was clear that Max wasn't a threat to anyone. I thought that would be the end of Karen's antics. I was wrong. The next day, when I went to take Max out for a walk, I noticed his collar was missing. It was a custom one with his name and my phone number on it. At first, I thought maybe it had fallen off somewhere, but then I checked the house and realized it wasn't there either. Something felt off. I searched for hours, but I couldn't find Max anywhere. I immediately checked my security cameras, and what I saw made my blood boil. Karen had come onto my property, taken Max's collar off, and led him away. I knew right away what she was trying to do. She wanted to get rid of my dog, thinking I would just give up. I called the local shelters, and sure enough, one of them had Max. Since Max was microchipped, the shelter contacted me when he was dropped off. According to them, a woman matching Karen's description had brought him in, claiming he was a stray she had found wandering the neighborhood. Thankfully, they scanned for a microchip, saw my information, and held on to him instead of putting him up for adoption. I wasted no time calling the police. I showed them the security footage and gave them all the information I had. Karen was charged with pet theft, and she's now facing legal consequences. Her defense? She thought she was doing the right thing. She told the officers she only wanted to teach me a lesson and never expected things to go this far. Apparently, she thought I would be too embarrassed to get Max back and would just move on. Well, she was wrong. Max is home, safe, and still named Max. As for Karen, I don't care what happens to her. She tried to take my dog from me over something as ridiculous as a name, and now she has to deal with the consequences. Am I the bad guy for refusing to change my dog's name and reporting my neighbor for stealing him? Let's start judging. Everyone is the bad guy. Some might argue that you could have tried to de-escalate the situation before it got out of hand. However, Karen's actions far outweigh anything you did.